welcome back to lesson, 24? Holy cow. We are reading our third Jamaica book. We just read these two. We have our new one today. So as always, we're going to start by predicting what this book might be about. So this is called Jamaica's Blue Marker. Now this cover is a little bit more complicated than some of the other covers have been. Jamaica standing there holding a marker, looking over at the other student or other boy. So if you need more time to talk, pause here. So I definitely notice this expression on her face is very interesting. Her eyes are looking right at this person here, and she's holding that marker tight to herself. So that makes me wonder if there's something going on between these two in this story. So we'll find out. So remember, the last two books we found that we thought Miss Havill was trying to teach us a lesson by the end of that story. She wanted us to think or think about something sort of important about being a member of a community and to learn a lesson from it. So your job as I read is to be thinking about what might be the lesson in this one, if there's a lesson again. So let's read Jamaica's Blue Marker by Juanita Havill. Jamaica's Blue Marker. Jamaica closed her eyes and thought about her picture. Mrs. Worth always said to think first, then draw. Jamaica opened her eyes and drew a tree on her big sheet of paper. Then she drew leaves falling off the tree and colored them yellow. Jamaica, Mrs. Worth said, could you please share your markers with Russell? He doesn't have any. He never has anything he needs, Jamaica thought. But she said, okay, even though she didn't want to share her markers with him. Russell brought his paper to Jamaica's table. He sat down beside her and grabbed her blue marker. Jamaica picked up her brown and orange markers to finish her picture. She didn't pay any attention to Russell. After a while, she peeked at his paper. Russell was making squiggly circles all over the page. We're supposed to draw a fall picture, Russell, said Jamaica. Who says? Mrs. Worth. Don't you ever listen? I don't have to. Russell reached out with the blue marker and made a streak across Jamaica's picture. Russell, stop! Jamaica shouted. But Russell scribbled all over Jamaica's yellow-leafed tree. Mrs. Worth, Jamaica cried, Russell wrecked my picture. Mrs. Worth hurried over to the table. Russell, did you do this? She held up Jamaica's picture. Mrs. Worth couldn't get Russell to say, I'm sorry. He had to go sit alone and work on spelling until art was over. Look at what Russell did! Jamaica showed her father and brother when she got home. I tried, but I couldn't make another as good as this one. When she looked at the ugly blue squiggles, she had to swallow hard not to cry. Russell is a mean brat. Did you tell Mrs. Worth what happened? Her father asked. Jamaica nodded. Russell can't use my markers again. I shared with him because he didn't have any. He never has what he's supposed to have, but that's no reason to be mean. No, her father said. Russell shouldn't have messed up your picture. The next time they had art, Jamaica was glad Russell didn't sit at her table. Then he couldn't bother her, and she didn't have to share her markers with him either. But at recess, Russell threw sand at her and chased 2 second-grade girls, so he had to go to the office. Before he came back, Mrs. Worth said, "I would like to tell you something. Can you keep a secret?" "Yes," Jamaica shouted with her classmates. "We are going to have a going-away party for Russell on Friday. His father has a new job in another town. They will be moving over the weekend. I thought that you might like to make cards to say goodbye. Then Russell will have something to remember us by." Mrs. Worth passed out paper. Then she showed everyone how to fold the paper into a card. Jamaica didn't want to make a card for Russell. She was glad he was moving. Then he wouldn't bother her anymore. So she put the paper in her desk. She didn't even make him a card. At supper, Jamaica said, "I like living here. I like my house and my room and the tree in the front yard. I like my school too." "I'm glad you do," her mother said. "I wouldn't like to move." "Who said anything about moving?" Ozzy asked. "Russell is moving," Jamaica said. "Lucky you. He won't mess up your pictures anymore," Ozzy said. "I wonder how Russell feels about moving," Dad said. "He might be upset. Has he talked about it?" "Russell doesn't say anything. He just gets in trouble," Jamaica said. Russell didn't come to the classroom on Friday morning. He was with his mother in the office. Jamaica looked at his empty desk. Next week, Russell would be gone. He wouldn't be at his desk ever again. She decided to make a card for Russell. She got out the blank card and her markers too. But just then, so that means at the same moment she did that, something else happened. But just then, Mrs. Worth asked, "Who are my helpers this week?" Jamaica raised her hand. "Jamaica, could you collect the cards and put them in Russell's desk?" "Brianna and Thomas, I'd like for you to clear the activity table for plates and cups." Jamaica went from desk to pick up the cards. She put the whole stack in Russell's desk. In Russell's desk. As she closed his desk, Russell came in with his mother. The party started. They played games for a while and ate cake. Russell opened his desk and took out all the cards. "Look, Mom, everybody made a card for me." Not everybody, Jamaica thought. She took the blue marker out of her bag. Then she ran up to Russell. "This is for you, Russell." She handed him the marker. "You can use it at your new school." "But you might need it," he said. "You like to draw. You draw the best pictures in class. What if you have to color the sky?" "Someone will share with me." "Thanks," he said. "You're lucky. You get to stay here." Now Jamaica knew how Russell felt about moving. "I wish you didn't have to move," she said. When Jamaica waved goodbye to Russell, she noticed that his mother was carrying his goodbye cards. Russell held up the blue marker and waved it at her as if he'd won a prize. "Goodbye, Russell. I'll miss you," Jamaica said. And she meant it. What a story. So turn and talk. What are you thinking after reading that story? Pause here. So now that you've talked about what you're thinking after reading that story, I have a couple questions for you. So if you did not discuss this in your chat just now, what do you think of that ending? Was that what you expected? Not what you expected? Was it a surprise? So talk about that and come back. I know that ending always catches me a little bit by surprise because it's really hard we use the expression to be the bigger person. And it's not about how big you are, it's about like your heart and about doing the right thing. So she had to make a decision to be the bigger person, even though Russell was not being a good friend to her. She made sure she did the right thing and she could feel good about her choices. So she was being the bigger person. So, would you have done the same thing as Jamaica? Would you have been able to be the bigger person? Would you have made him a card or not? Would you have given him markers or not? So that's important to think about. So, let's think about our genre and author's purpose conversation. So we've been finding that these Jamaica books are realistic fiction. They're stories that seem like they could be real. So the author is doing it to sort of get us to learn something, learn a lesson. So what might be Juanita Havill's lesson for Jamaica's blue marker? What does she want us to learn? So pause, because I'm going to give you my 2 cents when you're done. So I definitely feel like there was a lesson in this story too. So I feel like her lesson was actually probably the most complicated one and the hardest to explain, but I'll try my best to explain it succinctly. So I feel like the lesson in this story is kind of about having some empathy, which means understanding other people. So it would have been really easy for Jamaica to just say, okay, Russell's a mean person. I'm not going to do anything for Russell ever again. And I think a lot of people would probably do that. But instead, she was really spending time thinking about Russell's feelings. So let's see. I know a couple times she said, Russell never has anything that he needs. And then when she was talking with her family, she said, Russell's moving. And her father started her to think, he said, I wonder how Russell feels about moving. He might be upset. Has he talked about it? And she says, no, Russell didn't say anything. He just gets in trouble. And then she thought about how she would never see him again and that desk would be empty. She decided to make him a card, but then she didn't get a chance because she had to help instead. And then when she decided to give him that marker, he said, you're lucky. You get to stay here. Now Jamaica knew how Russell felt about moving. So she was really compassionate. She was understanding what might be going on for him and why he might be having trouble in school. And she was really understanding and decided that she wanted to do the right thing and try to make him feel better. So this is really about sort of understanding other people and understanding that sometimes people have other stuff going on in their life that you don't know about. And that might explain why they're having that tough time at that moment. And it's better to sort of be that bigger person, do the right thing, and you never know. Look at the nice ending she had with Russell. Goodbye, Russell. I'll miss you, Jamaica said. And she meant it. And look at him holding that marker. That means a lot to him. So she turned that moment from this sour moment into something really special that they'll both remember. So the lesson's really kind of big about understanding other people. So now the last part of this video is, thank you by the way for answering all those questions with me. The last part of this video are a few different suggestions I have for activities you can do connected to the text. So the first one that I'd like you to consider is comparing these 3 books. I'd like you to do something like a Venn diagram. Remember those circles? But now you would need 3 circles. And of course I did not bring my papers out here. I'm just going to use this really quickly so you know what I'm talking about. So you would have to do a 3-way Venn diagram where you have 1 book in each of the circles. And what you could think about is, if this is Jamaica's blue marker and this is Jamaica's find, what was the same between those 2 books? What was the same in all 3 books, right? So where those circles overlap, that's where you put the information of what's the same and what's different. So it might be kind of cool to see what things you're noticing repeat in the stories and what things are different in the stories. So that's my first suggestion of an extension activity. My second suggestion for an extension activity, we noticed that Juanita Havill really wrote these books to teach us lessons about being good citizens, being good people. So I'd love for you to go through the books you have at home, the books you love, the books you read all the time, and see if you can find any other books that do that. Because she's not the only author that likes to teach us lessons. So what other books do you have at home or do you read all the time that are really trying to teach us a lesson about being a better person or doing the right thing? Third suggestion is for you to, if you really liked having sort of lessons at the end of the stories, you could research Aesop's Fables. Read some Aesop's Fables together and talk about the difference between a lesson in a story and a moral in the story and the structure of a fable versus the structure of a story. Pardon me. So you could read Fables. Aesop's Fables would be really fun. Fourth, these were all realistic fiction, right? They seem like they could be real. Those are real types of problems people have, real decisions people have to make in real life. So what you could do is you could pretend you are Juanita Havill and think about what other dilemmas could Jamaica face? What other real life things could she have to make a tough decision about? So she had to make a tough decision here about whether to be honest and return the toy. She had to make a tough decision here about whether to include someone or not. And she had to make a tough decision here about how to handle someone who was being kind of a bully to her. So maybe you can think of some real challenges, real dilemmas that you have in your life that could be great ideas for Juanita Havill to make another Jamaica book, because she has a bunch of other ones that I just didn't read with you yet. Number 5, there's this and one more, so two last ideas. Number 5 is you could actually think about a dilemma you had. What's a time where you had to make a really tough decision and make your own story about that? And last, number 6, we can look at the art of Anne Sibley O'Brien. So she does all of this work with watercolors. So if you have watercolors at home or another paint that you could dilute with water and use it like watercolor, or even food coloring, if you mix it together kind of concentrated, you can use that like watercolor. And if you don't even have those things, what I do, I take it like this dried out marker. See how this isn't very bright anymore? See, it's all fading. So I would take a dried out marker like this and just put it in a tiny little bit of water in a small cup. And then that you can use as watercolor. So there's lots of ways to get paint if you don't have any at home. And try painting like Anne Sibley O'Brien. Her paintings, like my favorite one is this one. So you can screenshot one of these covers that you liked and use that as inspiration and try painting like she does. So that's a lot of ideas for this unit, but I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time for our next unit. Bye.